Hello and welcome once again to the virtual conference live talks with me, Dov Benyaacov-Kurtzman. And it's great to see that people are coming in to see who my special guest is for this talk. Well, what I can tell you is that what stands out for me about my next guest is, well, apart from her expertise, her wisdom and knowledge, that's why I brought her here. But what really stands out for me personally is that when I first met her, first came into contact with her, it was basically out of a cry for help. I'd got my first job as a clinical social worker in a place called Returno, if anyone knows it that's watching. It's a therapeutic community for people suffering from addictions, all sorts of addictions. And they have a women's section, a man's section, and an adolescent section split into boys and girls. And after my training, I got a job working with a group of male adolescents. And I was to give them a course over a certain amount of months. And I was really looking forward to it. And I actually asked the management if I could be the first person in the therapeutic community to introduce ACT into the treatment, because up until then ACT wasn't part of the treatment in this therapeutic community. And as it happened, they agreed, and I was very happy about that. But after I had opened my big mouth, then I had to come up with the goods, and so I wanted to put a cry out of help to the community, the ACBS community that I'm a member of. Can you help me with how I should actually approach this using ACT principles? And who came back to me but this beautiful human being, beautiful, generous human being called Sheri Turrell. And she said, her and Mary Bell, her partner, that were in the middle of writing a book. And they haven't published the book yet, but they're both willing to actually supply me with chapters from the book so that I could incorporate this into my interventions with the youth. And I could not believe it. I was absolutely blown away, first of all, with the speed of which they were willing to make an offer, but to offer me information and, material that was their personal material that hadn't yet been published. I was absolutely blown away with generosity. So what I can say about my guest is, apart from her, knowledge and wisdom as a therapist and a researcher and an author, generosity as a human being really stands out for me. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you now to my next guest. Please welcome, a big welcome for Sheri Turrell.
Thank you, Dov. What a lovely introduction. I hope I live up to it. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay,
and we can hear you fine, and it's great. And first of all, where is it that we're seeing you in? Where is this? Is this your home? Is this your office?
No, I'm very lucky here in Toronto because my private practice office is a 5-minute walk from home. And I would not have the privacy at home to do, 6 or 8 hours of therapy a day. So I just socially distance myself over to my office. So we have the stuffed animals, which I have no other place to put them. But this is a 3-toed sloth named Baxter that people seem to just really like cuddling, but it's a perfect armrest. Stuffed brain, which I get a lot of use out of. And my little raccoon, because we have a lot of raccoons in the area. It just seems perfect. So this is actually where my clients sit. So it's amazing and comfy.
And tell me, during these days, you're in Canada. For people that you're in Toronto, right? Yeah. Toronto, Canada. For people that don't know where you're coming in from at the moment, these days where you are clients still coming to your office?
No, we stopped the in-person, I think, quite close to the beginning of March. So I probably have 70% of my clients I'm seeing online, and then the rest we're doing phone sessions. So I haven't had any in-person for a long time.
Right.
So it's me rattling around in my clinic by myself.
But it's just down the road from your home.
Yeah, which is really lucky.
So that is. And so this basically series of programs that I'm doing is to address the matter of living under the conditions of Corona-19 or coronavirus or COVID-19, whatever names you want to give it. But basically a crisis situation, a world crisis situation where if they've not been affected directly by the virus itself, have all been directly hit by the restrictions, the lockdowns, the change of routine, the possible loss of work for a lot of people. And so their whole life has really been shaken up and turned upside down. And a lot of liberties have been taken away that we're very much used to. And so there's dealing with all of these things together, in addition to having that health threat, that very real health threat, every time you basically walk out your front door and or somebody comes in or so on. Every time the mail comes to me through the door, a little bell goes off in my head. You know, that's another threat. That's a kind of an intrusion into my sterile kind of zone in my house. And here's somebody's gone and put a letter through the letterbox, you know, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's been broken. And there's a whole kind of procedure, even though probably from letters, the chances of getting any kind of infection is, but the point is we've already been trained now by the media, by the whole policies and everything, that there is a serious situation and there are surfaces and people and everything that you can actually get infected from. So that's an intrusion already, just a letter. So even more so if somebody comes to the house or the children are going out and they're coming back, or you have teenagers in the house and they go out and they come back. Even though you don't want to have any friction in your family, everybody is on, you know, high revs, tolerances gone down, irritability has gone up. So I wanted to bring people in like yourself who have, you know, quite a good knowledge base, a lot of experience, and together that kind of forms a certain amount of wisdom from your perspective on how maybe we can deal with that. But even before we go into that, you know, you're also in this, right? It's just like everybody else, and this is again it's an unusual situation, I would say, where, you know, even if you're the therapist or the counselor or whatever, you're going through exactly the same things as your clients are in this case. So it's an unusual situation there as well. How are you personally? How do you get by? How do you handle it at the moment?
I think I rely a whole lot on my friends and my larger communities, especially in the acceptance and commitment therapy world, my dynamic world, and family, just to either help keep me grounded and distracted or to give me a hug when I need it. Because I think, like most people, I go through the day feeling like I'm kind of fine because, you know, to be honest, I haven't been personally impacted a whole lot aside from the restrictions, and I feel very fortunate. Yet sometimes I just find I'm going through the day and all of a sudden, especially if it's quiet, I just get this knot in my gut and this feeling that's pretty close to panic. And I think it's probably, you know, a very similar experience for many of us. There's just so much grief and loss, and it can really just creep up. And sometimes all I can manage at that point is to just acknowledge it, and then I reach out to somebody because I don't feel like being alone. If it's a phone call or, you know, getting a hug from someone in my family, patting the dog, because I think it's just one of those things, there's no real solution for it.
Right, yeah, and I think probably our minds, just as human beings, we're always looking for solutions, aren't we? We're always wanting to try and find it. Yeah. And you touched on it, the whole what's called social distancing maybe should be called physical distancing, but this distancing nevertheless is an added thing, isn't it? So it's humans really need that human to human contact, both verbally, touch, emotionally, spiritually. And that has kind of been threatened as well in these days. So yeah, I wanted just to explain to the viewers that I was saying to you before, while you were in the green room, I find you a very real person, right? You've got all this, wonderful resources and assets, but for me, you're just a real person, and I feel like you're just a friend in the room with me, and and that is what I think is really important as well, is that we become authentic, we become real during these days. And sometimes we're just not having a good time, and we don't have to be pressured to come up with new business solutions and take, all this stuff about take advantage of your time. And I had somebody speak to me on the phone saying, oh, I really don't want to come out of this and having wasted all my time and not, there's no such thing as waste of time. Every minute has some value. Even if you're not doing anything, there is something in every second and every minute. And you don't have to produce, a big statue at the end of this time to say, look what I've made while I was on a lockdown.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because for the first few weeks I was watching, Facebook posts and, hearing people talking about all the things they've been doing. I've been baking this and I've redecorated that. I've just learned a whole other language. And right before this hit, I was actually supposed to be in Italy giving workshops with a dear friend, and I had to cancel, and I was busy learning Italian. And I thought, okay, well, I might as well keep learning Italian and I'll be all set for when I do go. I haven't practiced Italian since the beginning of March.
There you go.
And so I'm looking at all these other people thinking, where are you getting the time to do this? And it felt like such pressure. But I think, if you're not working and you're at home, fair enough if you want to be productive. And then I think for those of us who are still working, it does bring in some mixed feelings. Like, I know I was feeling jealous. I'm like, I want that week off to just be home and clean my cupboard.
Yeah.
That said, I do feel very fortunate I'm still working and I'm able to support people. So I think that idea of being productive is a really mixed bag. And I think a lot of pressure on people to be productive. I also hear it, because I work, the majority of my clients are adolescents and the rest are adults, but I hear so much pressure from the teens that they're feeling they have to be productive. And they have to, even though their marks aren't going to change at school, because the system here has said, just hand stuff in, your marks will not go lower, which is great. But they just don't have the capacity. Like, everyone, I think, is grieving something. And if they can get 10 minutes of schoolwork done, that's great. Aside from, learn another language and do this and do this and do this. I think there's a time and a place for productivity, but we have to be really aware of when we're pushing it and flexible about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a comment here coming in from Jerusalem. It's Avi says, hi, this is Avi from Jerusalem. So if anybody else has got any comments or questions for Sheri as we're going along, just put them in the comments and we'll bring them up to Sheri as we go along. All right, enough of me, enough of us. Over to you, Sheri. You know the situation, and this is your nano workshop.
Oh boy, no pressure. I guess first I'll put it, I don't have all the answers, but I may at least have some helpful tidbits. I would like to do a shout out though, because I've been talking a lot about this with a few of my colleagues, and so a lot of my thoughts and opinions will not just be my own. But if I could do my little one moment of shameless advertising, Dov, because it has a piece with it. So a few years ago, my friends and colleagues, Mary Bell and Chris McCurry, and I wrote a teen self-help book for teens who are anxious. And we think it's a pretty good book. It's very experiential. And then we realized that, a lot of the clients we were working with, either the teen had the book and they didn't want to share it with the parents, or the parents bought the book and they end up reading it because the teen won't read the book. Occasionally you get a wonderful teen who's going to let the parent read it. They can work together. But that wasn't seeming to be the case. So we decided we were going to make parent videos. And we brought in a fourth colleague, Erin Lipset, who's an incredibly talented social worker that we've worked with. And we're making videos for the parents to go along with the book. So we're really excited about it. And I told the other three I was going to mention it here because now it's like a public commitment. This is one act of productivity that we have to do.
Is this the first public commitment you've made with this?
Yes.
All right. Wow. So that's
first big public commitment. And I don't know if Mary, Chris, or Erin are tuned in, They might,
I'm going to hold you to it then, that's for sure.
they might be fantasizing how they're going to kill me now.
When do you expect it to all start rolling, or what's the plan?
I think we have, so we're doing one video for each chapter of the book that says, like, here's a summary, here's an experiential exercise for you to do as the parent, so you learn it from the inside out. And then here's just something to think about if you're parenting an anxious teen that might be helpful. So we've divided it amongst the four of us. We're not as finished as we'd like to be, but I'm hoping we can start to drip it out in bits as opposed to waiting for the entire thing. So I'm hesitant to say when, in case the three of them are I would like, if it was just me, I'd like to start dripping it out by the end of May.
Okay. Wow.
You know, I'm kind of envisioning if I had a Saturday or a Sunday all to myself, I could just get it done. Yeah. It's very informal. You know, I'm trying to go with, like, try recording it twice and the second take is the one that's going. So it's not that rehearsed. It's not very practiced. We just wanted to put something out there. So we'll see.
More success and good luck with that. If you've got a teenager, or if you are a teenager, or if you know a teenager, then I think listen carefully to Sheri now, because it'll definitely be worth your while. Over to you, Sheri.
I hope so. You know, I think being a teenager through this is really, really hard. And I think, you know, I hear parents, easy enough. I don't mean to seem unempathetic to parents. I'm not. But I think it's easy to lose sight of why this is so hard for teens. And if we think of that developmental stage, it's all about identity and becoming independent and taking steps out into the world. And it's not about staying home 24/7 with your parents and trying to still work on, how do I be independent? How do I kind of keep going with my life? How do I get my identity when, you know, a lot of them are saying, like, every minute of my day is being scrutinized because my parents are right there.
Yeah.
And parents are working from home. They are right there. And now they realize, you know, my kids just slept till 1 PM and they're not being productive and they're not doing schoolwork. It does create a lot of stress around this. But, you know, the teens are losing out on just at the very basics. Their normal is gone. And that's scary. And I think even before the pandemic, with all the climate change concerns, you know, I had a lot of teens saying, why should I work hard in high school? There won't be a planet in 10 years. And they're really feeling this. So now we throw in a pandemic.
Wow.
And any motivation they had left, I think, is pretty hard to grab onto. So there's just the loss of normal, as you mentioned at the beginning. You know, a lot of them are losing out potentially on their first semester of university being in person. They don't get frosh week. They don't get graduation. Many of them here, they don't even get to go back to school to clean out their lockers, so they don't know what's going to happen to their personal effects when they've graduated. So I think there's just a lot of milestones that are getting missed, and they're heartbroken. And they're grieving.
Loss, isn't there?
It's a huge loss. And just because it's not the same loss as losing a job or, you know, having to work from home and the stress that all that brings up, you know, and of course, more loss if somebody is sick or has passed away from COVID, that's the extra stress. But I think we have to just really remember to take the teens where they're at, that their losses are just as significant as anybody else's. It's not a competition. And, you know, I hear a lot of teens saying, but my family's healthy, you know, one of my parents is still working, so I don't get to feel sad. And then they're holding it all in and they don't know what to do with the feelings because they just feel ashamed and guilty for having some feelings when they've still got the basics covered.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot that we, whether we're therapists or parents or family or friends, can do to just really normalize that sense of loss and grief and put a name to it and allow some space for it. Because I think the whole world is grieving and we're all going to need a great big hug when this is over and done and we're allowed to have hugs. You know, physical contact too is key.
I think that I think that you hit on it. Also regarding contact, I mean, teenagers, they're, you know, they like to hang out in packs. You know, they like to be that kind of group kind of thing. That's very important to them. There's also a battle of hierarchy going on, just in general speaking. But you know, and that's all been kind of ripped apart as well at the moment, isn't it? There's that grieving part as well that we might forget or easily forget as adults, that all we see is, look, wait a minute, my son and my daughter's not getting up till 1, 2 in the afternoon. What's going on here? Why they should be up, at 8 o'clock with me, and what they begin to notice maybe or see their teenagers under a magnifying glass because they're constantly got their eye on them now. So
Yeah,
I think that as well.
It really heightens, I think, the moment to moment, hour to hour emotional shifts that are just normal for that age group. Now parents are seeing it, and if as a parent you're seeing it more, or you might be a little more anxious yourself, suddenly every burp and hiccup from your teenager has got parents' anxiety heightened, and it's just going around and around. But back to your point as well, Dov, they are pack animals. And, I remember Mary saying to me so eloquently once when we started working together that in order for teens to separate and really become independent, they need that new tribe so that they can feel safe leaving the old one.
Yeah.
Right. Which I've always remembered the way she put that. It makes so much sense. And so their tribe of peers is so important. And on the one hand, yes, they're still connected online. Although as a complete aside, I'm realizing with all my online therapy, without the physicality in the room, I do find there's something that's not there. Yeah. And I just wonder about these generations where so much social interaction is online, what they're losing. But that's an aside perhaps for another time.
Well, Avi, sorry to just at that point, because he's mentioning something regarding social media as well. And, that there's a lot of bullying that goes on these days on social media, Facebook, but there's other social media that happens as well. And he's saying that parents don't always understand that, let's say, virtual bullying or whatever you want to call it, social media bullying. Yeah. And how that's also probably going on at the moment as well still.
Yeah, there was a part of Avi's question I wasn't quite clear on. I'm wondering if Avi can just clarify a little bit.
Yeah.
Is it the parents that don't understand, and who's asking who about putting stuff outside? I just wasn't clear on the must-have.
So let's ask Avi that, if you could come back and tell and clarify the question a little bit, and then Sheri can get to it. Thank you, Avi, for that.
Yes, thank you. I think even without the pandemic, it can be an issue around bullying. And as teens want to pull away from their parents, they want their privacy. We may or may not know that stuff is happening. A lot of teens go through it and never tell their parents because they're so ashamed. And again, with the loss of privacy that comes with living on top of each other in your home, teens are losing that privacy, which has the good and the bad. And parents may be more aware of things. I've had quite a few teens saying to me, I'm talking to my friends online or on the computer like you and I are, except parents are nearby and they hear snippets of the conversation. And then they get kind of ignited and their worry takes hold, which is probably already high because of everything that's going on. I think our emotional resiliency is not stellar at times. Yeah. And they might start to, hear and kind of input meaning into things that's not really there, thinking it's a bigger catastrophe than it is, wanting the teens to do something about it. And the teens like, no, we're fine. Or it could be the case where, really awful things are happening. And because everything is out there online, the teens just sort of don't know what they're walking into. But I'm hearing a lot more, maybe this speaks to Avi's point, that because of the need for all the social life to happen online, teens, I think, are accessing more social media or different forums for it than they were. They might have been just restricted to Instagram or Snapchat, and that was fun. Now they're actually coming back to Facebook and going on Twitter, and there's a lot more stuff happening. And I think just with everybody's stress level, people can miscommunicate, they misunderstand each other. It's hard to be assertive and solve conflicts online with, your 3,000 friends that you've never met.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like you can go to school and ask the principal to intervene and try to resolve things right now.
You're kind of on your own, aren't you? You're a lot more on your own anyway.
Yeah.
You've articulated the problem. Okay, so this is the situation that we're in now. If you're a parent or somebody that has a connection, even a teacher under these circumstances, what can you suggest from your, from an experiential point of view now that we can kind of give over to the people watching this to try and help Right?
And maybe this is a good time to try an experiential.
Yeah.
I usually do this with my eyes closed to really sink into it, but I did this last week for a webinar with Mary, and I finished my eyes closed part, and I opened my eyes, and the 185 people that were there were gone because my Wi-Fi stopped working. And because I had my eyes closed, I had no idea when it stopped working. Mary noticed right away I was gone, and so she jumped in on the eyes closed, and then she got knocked off the Wi-Fi. So live and learn. Now I might not stare right at my clients or out here, but I will keep my eyes open.
So now you don't want to hear the thoughts that are going through my head right now, but
what's happening, Dov?
Let's hope the Wi-Fi stays on for this time. But
just in case, I've already Googled how to hotwire my phone to my computer, because if it gives out, my phone will still work.
Yeah. Okay.
If you happen to lose me, because I'm in a very Wi-Fi heavy area, give me 2 minutes and I will find my way back on.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful.
And just to kind of couch this a little bit, I think probably what's helped me and helped a lot of the families I work with, and I asked the teens for the last few weeks since you and I scheduled this, I've been polling them. What do you want me to say? What do you want parents to know? And they've all been bringing up a lot of the same stuff, which is give me some privacy, which comes up because when we're trying to book sessions and mom's in the next room working, kids can't talk. Right. So it's kind of put the pressure on the family to communicate, like, can someone go for a walk so this kid can have privacy?
Yeah.
That's been a thing. So they're asking for privacy, they're asking for patience, and they're asking for flexibility. And those seem to be the three that I'm hearing most often.
Well, you just hit it on. Avi's come back to us and saying, here in this family, there is no privacy. Maybe that's the issue here. And that, I think you've just touched on. That's a big issue. And privacy is so important for teens, isn't it? So important.
And for parents. And I'm thinking, it all trickles around in a family. So if parents are trying to work from home, and I know a lot where, there's two working parents, there's young kids. So now parents are employees, they're the daycare provider, they're everything, and they're not getting any privacy either. Yeah. So I think by the time everyone congregates for dinner, the stress can be pretty high. It makes us all a little intolerant of things we might have been more tolerant for. But sometimes the privacy has to get really creative, organizing walks so one person can have an hour at home if you're living somewhere where you can do that. But that also brings up the issue too, and then we'll get to the experiential. I think a lot of what was just autopilot for us, things we could just do during the day, is off autopilot. Everything takes planning and thought and energy. If I'm going grocery shopping, where do I put my groceries when I get home? How do I open my mail? Where's the hand sanitizer? If I go for a walk at this time so my kid can have an hour of privacy, when do I send them out? And do I trust them? And are they comfortable going out? Or do they have to sit on the front porch? And is it pouring rain out? There's so much thinking that has to go into the smallest details now, and a lot of coordinating that if you don't already communicate well, I think it just comes to the surface, and it's kind of forcing some attention on the things that are tough.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a whole logistical exercise now, everything you just said. And if you're not very good at logistics, or like you said, your communication situation is not at its best. And even if it was great, it's probably gone down now anyway. It's a recipe for a lot of suffering there. Yeah,
absolutely. And I do think, I'm cautious to try to say to people, what do you want to get at the end of this, and what do you want to stand for at the end of all this? Because I think sometimes we just want to get through the day in one piece.
Yeah.
Right. That said, I do think, a lot of the people I talk to, because of the quarantine, because of the social distancing, because we're home with families, it's actually bringing up a lot of our vulnerabilities so much to the surface that it's hard to avoid them now.
Yeah, they're right there, and they're totally exposed.
The conversations we've been avoiding, we can't avoid. The assertiveness that we've been hedging on to say to our kids, clean your own bathroom, you're 17 years old, figure this out. Or kids being able to say to their parents, could you please not walk in my room all the time? I need privacy. It's coming to a head, and things are starting to happen, which is a nice side of it. It's just a difficult one.
Yeah, and there's also because everybody's in the house for so many hours now, and we're basically, we're living in our house, working in our house, playing in our house. There's a lot of maintenance that needs done in the house. I mean, there's a lot more cleaning, a lot more tidying up, and there might be a traditional person who does that in the house. So it might be a mother, it might be a father. They might have normally had help from outside, and that's not happening anymore.
Yeah.
And there might be this turn now to the teenagers saying, do your own, pick your own clothes off the floor, make your own bed, make your own meals. I'm not the chef. This is not a hotel, and so on and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I got it when I was a teenager, so I still remember it. But
we can talk about that later, Dov.
It's even more so now. It's even more so now because of all what we just the picture we've just painted.
Yeah, and it might be nice if you're a teenager who's quarantined at home, if you're interested in learning to cook, or you're about to go to university and you need to learn to feed yourself, or it might be handy to know how to do your own laundry or clean a bathroom, which is great. But for some teens, just depending on personalities, just kind of getting the message the way you put it out there is going to be very aversive, and they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Or it's going to blow up. Yet this could be a good time to learn some skills like planning and organizing and, kind of how do we talk to the family and co-organize things.
Yeah.
And what do you want to learn while you're home? I'm still hell-bent on learning Italian. It will happen. And I know my teen is doing the occasional little bit of cooking, which is great. That said, I have to be really, kind of super aware of how each day is unfolding, because some days they just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Yeah, they don't have the bandwidth. It's important to bring them in if you can.
Yeah.
And not leave them to, be in the room on their own the whole time. I think, anyway, you're the expert, but I would have thought bring them in if you can and give them some sort of responsibility within the family would help them give that sense of contribution, I think.
Yeah. Which I think does a lot, too, to them feeling independent and competent and like they can actually function and do something. I think a lot of it gets to that how.
Yeah.
And I hear the thing, and I'm sure I do it to my family, teens are right in the middle of some social thing. It's like, dinner's ready in 5, like turn that off now and come and do this.
Yeah.
But of course, what I'm also hearing is because they don't have the in-person at school anymore, if they're not online for every second that everybody else is online, they might miss like the next social arrangement.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas, we're online and we're just, chatting or playing a game, and we go offline, or I miss part of it, and let's say everybody else arranges something else. If I see you at school tomorrow morning, I might find out about the thing that I missed, and then I can be there.
Yeah.
But that's not happening. So the kids don't want to miss a second of it. So again, I think it's how do you bring them into the fold, stay connected, give them some responsibility that's within their reach, and do it in a way that's kind of palatable and going to work for everybody. And that's where I think that flexibility and being present in the moment is so key. It's just not easy.
Isn't it? It's just not easy.
I still have those moments where in the back of my head, I'm thinking, shut up, don't say that, stop. But out of my mouth, stuff's coming. It happens to all of us. So if it's a good time, Dov, I'll do a sort of a brief experiential. How much time do we have left?
Yeah, okay. So we're just, let me just get this. Somebody just wrote in, says, hi, Dov, first time I've tuned in. Okay, that's nice. It's good to listen in on other therapists. I agree with you both. Normal tasks require so much more thinking now. Her name is Ruth. She's worked for the National Health Service here in the UK. Working hard at the moment. Yeah, the National Health Service, a front line at the moment here in all of the UK. So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more energy and resources needed. Abby comes back saying the parents don't know how to start the separation process. Also the teens. Yeah, it's a learning process for both sides, basically, isn't it?
It is.
So this is the time. We've got a few more minutes left. You have the time you need because the experiential part is really the heart of this program.
Okay, so what I would suggest for those who are here with us or watch it later, if you are willing and able and have a safe, quiet place to close your eyes and sit really comfortably, then I'd invite you to do that, because I think the experience is just so much richer. And just so I can sink into it a little better, I'm just going to let my gaze fall, but I'm going to have kind of half an eye on the screen to make sure you don't disappear. That was so embarrassing. But what I would ask people to do if they can is just close their eyes and bring to mind a sense of who they really want to be as a parent. You know, if I had your teen in my office and I said, what do you love about your parents? What do you appreciate about them? What would you hope your teen identifies? Because it just, right from your heart, the middle of your soul, this is who you want to be, especially in relation to staying connected to your teen. What are the 2 or 3 words, let's say they might be adjectives or adverbs, that just describe the you that you want to be at your optimal best? And I often hear things from parents like being supportive, being empathetic, being patient and loving, and just bringing those words to mind. And then I'll ask to just sort of scroll through your memory banks for the last time that your behavior came from that place. And see if you can just bring an image to mind of you being that parent that you want to be. And I'm absolutely positive that everybody's had that moment at some point. If we can just sift past all the rubble, especially of recent times, it's in there. And if you can really pull that memory to mind in terms of where you are, who's there with you, what's around you, what you can see and hear. Even bringing, if it's with your teen, the look on their face, the sound of their voice. And just noticing how that moment feels inside for you. Just noticing what emotions or sensations come along with that memory of being the parent that you really want to be. And like any good parent, it's impossible to be that parent 24/7. None of us can do it. Now, if somebody can, I'm going to feel really bad, so don't tell me. And just see if you can catch the stuff that shows up inside, the thoughts, the feelings, the worries, the judgments. What's the stuff that can show up inside and get in your way, really detour you from being that parent? You know, is it thoughts like, when will this end? I can't stand being home with everybody. My teenager can't do their homework. They're not going to pass their year. Their student life and success is over. You get tumbling into worries. Just noticing, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's anxiety. Oftentimes I hear it's shame if our kids are struggling, that we feel like a not good enough parent. So just getting in touch with your frequent flyers, what shows up the most? And what do you do when that stuff shows up? What's your next parenting move when you get hooked by all those really difficult thoughts and feelings that are hard to have? And chances are, whatever's showing up for you is something that's happened more than once. There's usually a pattern. You might even let your imagination go to the point that you can imagine what you do in response to your thoughts and feelings to quiet them down. What does your teen do next? And I often hear things from parents to quiet their own stuff down. They'll yell at their teen, they'll lecture them, they'll reassure them, they'll tell them they don't really feel the way they're feeling. Or they might give them what I call the laundry list of all the things to do, and then everything will be fine. Or they just avoid the tough conversation. So getting in touch with what you do when you want to avoid those unwanted thoughts and feelings, and some awareness of how that plays out down the road. If this is a repeated moment, and I like these because it gives us a bit of predictability, we can see them coming. Go back to those initial words that you identified that describe you as the parent you want to be. I'll just use caring and supportive for now. And imagine that difficult moment with your teen when all those thoughts and feelings, the worry, the shame, the angst is showing up. And you're about to make that move that you usually make. Bring those important qualities to mind. We call them values. Hold those in mind. And notice if your imagination can actually allow you to picture what you might do instead. When the I'm a bad parent shows up, and my teen will never be a successful functioning member of society. When that shows up, bring those values to mind. And just notice if you can actually imagine yourself doing something different. Something that might be more about connecting. And then if you're ready, just ask people to gently open their eyes. Perhaps just let your vision fall on the first thing that gets your attention, because we've been eyes closed for a little while. And then taking in the whole room very slowly and gently.
Wow. I was, again, just before you started, but definitely during it, I was a father of teenagers as well once, but it took me back to when I was actually a teenager. It's just, I think sometimes just to remember that we were all teenagers once, and we all went through similar things in different contexts and different times. But the growing up of a teenager, the processes that they go through are the same for all teenagers, aren't they? Really, it's development of a human being that goes through that adolescent stage, and I think a parent can have an advantage if they can connect to that, to be able to relate to those adolescents in their house. But that was beautiful. I really, really felt that and connected to every word that you were saying there.
And I hope for some people that they were able to picture something a little bit different happening. Because I think, one of the things I find it's easy to forget as a parent, that a big part of our job is to just help our kids have their feelings.
Yeah. And
sometimes there's no solution to the problems, i.e. COVID, really. We can do our best, but it's a worldwide effort. But some of the day-to-day losses and restrictions, there is no solution. We don't have control. We can't change it. So I think as a parent, if we can, sometimes I walk home from work and I get those words in my mind, right? Patience and presence. Those have been my two this week, because I really want to walk in the door, take a couple of breaths, bring those words to mind, and really see not only my teen, but the rest of my family. Just try to see them without all the thoughts and the judgments and the worries clouding my mind. See who's actually right there in front of me and what they need. And sometimes for teens, it's often to just say, gee, I've noticed you're doing X and Y, or you seem to be a little worried or anxious. You look a little sad, maybe because you're missing your friends and, because of this and because of this. And then we often don't need to do anything else. If we can just really be present with the feelings and help our teens label them and put a name to them, sometimes that's all we need. And I say it's all we need, but I think it's a big thing, is to just not alone with those big, scary feelings.
And just knowing that somebody's seen us, isn't it? As a teenager, just knowing that somebody's noticed that about me.
And we may not need to do any problem solving or reassuring or anything. I often find, even with my own teen, if I can just get that far and zip it, they come up with a solution all on their own when there's a moment that actually needs a solution. If I can just, manage my own anxiety enough to just...
That rescue urge that we have all the time, huh? We want to save the world.
Don't we? But sometimes, we try to rescue with the best of intentions, and they're feeling like my parents don't think I'm competent. I think sometimes our anxiety gets in the way of really showing the faith and the confidence that we have in them. So being able to slow down see who's right in front of us, bring our parenting values to mind, brings us a lot of opportunity to be flexible, right? Like there might be a moment to be productive and there might be a moment to just let that one go. Right?
Slow down and see them and be present with them is wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Absolutely. And even though it's doable, it is doable just to slow down. It's a practice though, but it's doable.
Yeah.
You just be with them sometimes without trying to solve all the problems.
Yeah. I know a lot of parents I'm working with have told me they have sticky notes around the house now with just like sort of one word of the day, like what's the value today? And they're just trying to remember the one as opposed to 2 or 3. Like, what's the one quality I want to bring forward today? And with the little sticky notes around the house where life is actually happening, it's a little easier in that way to kind of get that on board, which it might have not been quite so easy without COVID. But that seems to be quite a helpful thing too.
Well, we've had people writing into us. It's been interactive. It's been extremely experiential, more than I expected even. But also to learn of your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience just in general, how to deal with this has been enlightening, especially for me, and I'm sure for everybody listening. Sheri Turrell, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who took time out of their day to join us. I hope something's been helpful. You know, we are all in this together. So.
And good luck with the rest of your projects.
Thank you very much. And you too.
Bye now.
Take care.